there. It's me, Little Red Riding Hood. So today, my mom told me that I should go check the mailbox because I probably have some mail from my grandma. I love my grandma. Let's check and see if she sent me anything. I'm gonna put my basket down. Mail! Oh my gosh, it says Red Riding Hood, 123 Scarlet Lane, Enchanted Forest. That's where I live. And it says it's from Grandma. Let's see what she says. So excited. Dearest granddaughter, I have baked you a very special treat, but before you can eat, you must follow the math map to find my house number. Then I'll give you something sweet. Ooh, I love sweet stuff. A math map? Do some math to find my house. Oh my gosh. An X marks the spot where you should begin. Love, Grandma. This looks like a map. I'm gonna have to follow this map, starting here and going around to find out where Grandma's house is. I've never been there before. I don't know where she lives. So I'm gonna have to do some math to find out what Grandma's house number is so I can get there and get my special sweet treat. Do you wanna come with me? I hope you do. Here we go. There's an X. X marks the spot. That's what Grandma said. Okay, well, let's see here. It says start here, and X marks the spot where you should begin. So I need to write down this house number. Let's see here. I've got my notebook paper right here. I'm gonna put my basket down. This house number, 10515. Now let's see, this is the ones, the tens, the hundreds place, then I put a comma. So this number is 10,515. So here I've started, and it looks like I'm supposed to go across the street, find out that house number, and add it to the number I already have. Let's go. I like to sing when I walk. Oh, look. This is house number 10514. Let's go ahead and add that. I'm gonna put my basket down. And she said, Grandma said to add this number. So I'm gonna put plus 10514. Gotta put my comma. Now let's add. 5 plus 4 equals 9. 1 plus 1 equals, that's right, 2. 5 plus 5 equals 10. I write my 0, I carry my 1. 1 plus 0, that's just 1. 1 plus 1, that's 2. Now I have to put my comma. Ones, tens, hundreds, there's that comma. Our number now is 21,029. The next house after add me says to go next door and subtract me. So I need to find the number from next door and subtract it from my total. Here we go. These woods are scary. Here we are. This house, I see the number. It's 10512. Let me put down my basket. Now remember, I have to subtract this number. So I'm going to say minus 10,512 and subtract. 9 minus 2 is 7. 2 minus 1 is 1. 0 minus 5? Uh-oh. If I have 0 cookies, I can't just give you 5 cookies. I have to borrow from my neighbor. My neighbor, I borrow. Their 1 becomes a 0. My 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 0 minus 0 is just 0. And 2 minus 1, it's 1. Ones, tens, hundreds, put a comma. Now my number is 10,517. Next, my grandma's map says to add me. So I'm going to go next door, find their house number, and add it to my total. Here we go. Here we are. I found the house. Let me put down my basket. Okay. Well, I ended at 10,517. Now I have to add this number right here. Let me put my plus sign. This number is 10510. Let's add this. 7 plus 0. That's easy. It's 7. 1 plus 1, we all know that, it's 2. 5 plus 5 is 10. I can't just write a 10 down here. I have to write my 0 and carry my 1. 1 plus 0 plus 0, it's just 1. And 1 plus 1 is 2. Ones, tens, hundreds, put my comma. My new total is 21,027. Can't wait to find out what's next, Grandma. Next on my grandma's amazing scavenger hunt of houses, I have just added. Now I have to subtract me. It looks like this house is just across the street from where my grandma just had me go. So let's find out where that is. Here we go. Oh my gosh, it's getting dark and scary out here in these woods. Oh look, there's the house number I needed. Okay. Well, let's get out my page so I can start adding and subtracting again. Okay, my last number was 21,027. Now I have to subtract this house number, which is 10511. Let's subtract. 7 minus 1 is 6. 2 minus 1 is 1. 0 minus 5. If I have 0 cookies, I can't just give you 5 cookies because I don't have any. I have to borrow from my neighbor. My neighbor has a whole batch. I cross it out. They have 0. Now I take that and I have 10. 10 minus 5 is, that's right, 5. And 0 minus 0, that's silly. It's just 0. And 2 minus 1 is 1. Ones, tens, hundreds, put that comma. My new house number is 10,516. I can't wait to get to my grandma's house. Well, geez, I think I'm all done with my math problems to be able to find grandma's house. Let's double check and make sure I did it all right. I started at the first house, then I added, I subtracted, I added again, and I just got here and subtracted. Now, when I was done subtracting, the number I ended up with was 10516. So that should be my grandma's house right here. And look, that's where the picture of cookies is. I think that's where my grandma is. Let's go find out. Oh, here we go. This should be it. There's the number, 10516. 516. And remember, if we put our comma in the right place, the way we say this number is 10,516. This is my grandma's house. This is where the cookies are. Let's go ring her doorbell and see if we can get our cookies. Come on. Grandma has such a nice car. Wow. Uh-oh. What a nice wind chime. Grandma, should I ring her regular doorbell or her ring? She'll have a video of me. Let's do both. Ring. Here I am. And ring the regular doorbell.
Hello.
Hi, Grandma. It's me, Little Red Riding Hood.
Hello, granddaughter. Are you here for your cookies?
Yes, I filled out the whole map just like you told me, and I did all the math to get to your house. 10,516. Are my cookies here?
Your cookies are here, granddaughter.
Wait a second. Grandma, you look different.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Grandma, what big ears you have.
The better to hear you with, my dear.
And Grandma, what a big nose you have.
The better to smell you with, my dear.
And Grandma, what big teeth you have.
The better to eat you with, my dear.
What good cookies, Grandma. Glad that wolf didn't get in my way. It was well worth the trip.
Hi, kids. How are you doing today? This is your new teacher. My name is Elmo. So let's go ahead and try this question. It says that Mr. T, Mrs. Miller, and Mrs. Kiser went on a shopping spree and bought some new clothes for the new school year. What? Mrs. Miller spent a total of $85. Then it says Mrs. Kiser, what? She spent $25 more than Mrs. Miller? Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. Oh, Mr. T only spent $10. Yeah, that seems like Mr. T. Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Kiser looked at Mr. T's clothes and said that he was not allowed to shop at his neighbor's garage sale. Oh, that's silly, Mr. T. And then, oh, that's so nice of them. It says each of them gave Mr. T an additional $25 to shop at the domain so that he can look more fashionable. Okay, so the question says, what was the total amount of money spent on the clothes from all of these three teachers? It's a lot of money, I will tell you that. Okay, good luck, kids. I know you can do this. Alright, let's see what you got, kids. Did you come out with $255? Good job, kids.
Okay, let's go ahead and analyze this question. You always want to ask yourself, what is it that I know from this question? Well, based on this question, I know that three teachers, Mr. T, Mrs. Miller, and Mrs. Kaiser, they all went shopping, and each one spent a certain amount of money. Okay, so I know that Mrs. Miller spent $85. I know that Mrs. Kaiser spent 25 more than Mrs. Miller, which means that Miss Kaiser spent 85 plus 25, and that's going to give me 110. And I also know that Mr. T, he only spent $10. What a smart shopper he is. All right. But it says here that Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Kaiser, they saw what Mr. T wore and they said, no, that's not gonna work. You can't buy stuff at his garage at a garage sale. So they felt sad for him and they decided to be nice and each of them gave Mr. T an additional $25. So it says here that Mr. T, received $25 from Mrs. Miller and $25 from Mrs. Kaiser. So what does that mean? That means Mr. T spent $10 and he's also going to spend another $50 to go shopping at the domain. So a total is going to be $60. Okay? So then from this question, it says, what was the total amount of money spent on the clothes from all three teachers? So total means you're going to add up all of the amount that they spent. And you're going to get Mr. T plus Mrs. Miller plus Mrs. Kaiser equals, well, Mr. T spent 60, Mrs. Miller spent 85, and Mrs. Kaiser spent a whopping 110. Add these numbers up together and you get $255. That's how you get it.
Okay, kids, let's try this question now. It said Mr. Rhodey's goal is to practice playing his guitar for, wow, 300 minutes in a week. On Sunday, he practiced for 117 minutes. Wow, that's a lot of minutes. And then on Tuesday, he practiced for 58 minutes. That's it? Hell, the question says, how many more minutes does Mr. Rhodey need to practice in order to meet his goal? He needs a lot more minutes. Come on, Mr. Rhodey. Okay, is it going to be A, 125 minutes, B, 235 minutes, C, wow, 475 minutes, or D, 175 minutes? Okay, good luck, kids. Okay, let's see what you chose. Did you choose the answer to be A, 125 minutes?
Yahoo!
Good job!
All right, kids, let's go ahead and analyze this question. All right. So always start, what do I know? Let's break down some information from this question. I do know that on Sunday, Mr. Rhodey practiced for 117 minutes. I also know that on Tuesday he practiced for 58 minutes. So therefore, with these two information, I can combine the 2 minutes, and I know that a total so far, Mr. Rhodey practiced for 175 minutes. If you add these two up, you should get 175 minutes. Now, based on what I also know is Mr. Rhodey wants to practice his guitar for a total of 300 minutes. And in the question, it asks how many more minutes did Mr. Rhodey need to practice. So did he meet his goal? No, not really. He still has some more practice time that he needs to make. So how many more minutes does Mr. Rhodey need? Well, when you see these key essential words, many more, you should know to use the skill of subtraction. That is correct. Yes. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take his total minutes that he needs to reach, and we're going to subtract 175 from it. So let me get my pen out. Okay, so we're going to subtract. So can you take a 0 minus 5? No, you cannot. So you must borrow from your neighbor. Well, no one's living at home right here, so let's go to the other neighbor's house. Ah, I see, we can borrow from here. Well, we borrow from here, okay? This 3, I'm actually going to borrow from here and take 100 from it because it's in the 100 spot. This becomes 2. This becomes 9. Okay. And this becomes 10. So then now you can subtract 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 or 90 minus 70, because it's in the 10 spot, is going to be 20 or 2, because it's in the 10 spot. And then 2 or 200 minus 100 or 1 is going to be 1. And therefore, you're going to get 125. Okay? That's how you get it. Now, here's a cool trick also that you can do with this kind of subtraction where you don't want to borrow. That's fine. So here's a cool trick, okay, that Mr. T wants to show you. I can actually add numbers. So difference really means finding the numbers or the difference between two numbers, right? Well, I can actually add numbers. If I add it to both numbers, right, and then I take the difference, I should get the same answer as long as you add the same numbers. Okay, so it's kind of like if you compared yourself to, let's say, your dad, right? Who's taller? Well, obviously your dad, right? If your dad's taller, if you're taller and you're at 10 years old and you're taller than your dad, that's pretty interesting. But let's just say your dad is taller. Well, how much taller is your dad? Well, all you have to do is stand on a chair and your dad stands on a chair. Well, if you guys do this, do it very safely, okay? And if both your dads stand on a chair, because you're adding your height, the difference between height is still going to be the same, right? Okay, your dad's still going to be taller even though he stands on a chair. The same height of chair though. That's the key point, right? Because if you stand on a taller chair than your dad, you may end up being taller than your dad. So if we add numbers here, I'm going to get 325 and this becomes 200. Well, look at this. I do not have to borrow, okay, to get my answer. I will still end up getting 125. right? So that's kind of what subtraction is. Okay, so you can do it this way. It gets a little tricky, but if you know how to do it this way right here, it works just as well. Remember, there are infinite number of ways to answer a math problem. All right, let's move on.
Yay, this is the last one. He says, on Thursday, Mrs. Dominguez grilled 215 pounds of meat. On Friday, Mrs. Mesker's grilled twice that amount. Yum. Elmo hungry. On Saturday, Mrs. Frank grilled 130 pounds of meat. How much more did Mrs. Mesker grill than Mrs. Dominguez and Mrs. Frank combined? Ooh! Is it going to be A, 90 pounds of meat, B, 95 pounds of meat, C, 80 pounds of meat, or D, 85 pounds of meat? Elmo's very hungry now. Okay, you can do
Baby shark do 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 do, baby shark do 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 do, baby shark. Mommy shark do 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 do, mommy shark do 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 do, mommy shark do 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 do, mommy shark.
Daddy shark do 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 do, daddy shark do 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 do, daddy shark do 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 do, daddy shark.
Grandma shark do 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 do, grandma shark do 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 do, grandma shark do 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 do, grandma shark.
Grandpa shark do 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 do, grandpa shark do 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 do, grandpa shark do 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 do, grandpa shark. Let's go hunt do 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 do, let's go hunt do 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 do, let's go hunt do 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 do, let's go hunt.
Run away do 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 do, run away do 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 do, run away do 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 do, run away. Safe at last do 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 do, safe at last do 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 do, safe at last do 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 do, safe at last. It's the end do 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 do, it's the end do 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 do, it's the end do 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 do, it's the end.
Okie dokie, artichokey. What'd you guys choose for this one? I hope you chose D, 85 pounds of meat. All right, good job.
Yay, it's the last one. All right, you're doing great so far, kids. All right, let's go ahead and analyze this one. Well, you always want to ask yourself, based after reading the question, what do I know, right? Write down the information. What is it in this question that I know? Well, I know that Miss Dominguez grilled 215 pounds of meat. I know that Mrs. Mesker grilled twice that amount. Okay, so that means that I take Mrs. Dominguez's number 215 plus 215. I'm gonna get 430 pounds of meat. That's a lot of meat, Miss Metzger. Okay, and then I also know that Mrs. Frank grilled 130 pounds of meat. This is the information that I have so far. Okay, so then I continue reading and I say, well, how much more meat did Mrs. Mesker grill than Mrs. Dominguez and Mrs. Frank combined? So there's a lot of information in here that we can dissect. Okay, so I know that Mrs. Dominguez grilled 215 pounds of meat. I know that Mrs. Frank grilled 130 pounds of meat. But there's a key word that says combined. Okay, and combine means you're taking two or more things together, and you're putting it together. So if you're putting it together, you're going to do what? Correct? You're going to add them. Okay, so now I take 215 plus 130. I'm going to get 345 pounds of meat combined. Okay? All right, now that I know that Mrs. Dominguez and Mrs. Frank combined is 345 pounds, I also know that Mrs. Metzger has 430 pounds of meat that she is grilling. Okay, so who has more, Mrs. Dominguez and Mrs. Frank combined, or Mrs. Metzger? Obviously, Miss Metzger, right? Okay, so therefore, you want to ask yourself, how much more does Mrs. Metzger have? Well, when you see the words how much more and how many more, you are going to do what? Subtract, right? You're going to find the difference, okay? So let's go ahead and subtract our numbers here. So I have 430 minus 345. I'm going to do 0 minus 5. Can I do 0 minus 5? No, you cannot, right? So you need to go to your neighbor in the 10 spot, and you're going to borrow. Hello, Mr. Neighbor. I need to borrow some sugar or something from you, right? Your neighbor is going to give you 10, okay? You're going to borrow 10 because here it's 30. You're going to borrow 10, and this becomes 2 or 20, and this becomes 10 in the 1 spot, right? So now you can subtract. 10 minus 5 is 5. And then you're going to say 2 minus 4 is, oh, I cannot borrow. I cannot subtract. I have to borrow again. I'm going to borrow from my hundreds neighbor. Well, I'm going to borrow 100 from my neighbor right here. Okay, so if I borrow 100, this is 400. He becomes 3 or 300. Okay, and I'm going to take that 100, I'm going to add it to this guy. This guy looks like a 12, but it's actually 120. Okay, it's 100 plus 20 right here, 120. So then I can just say here, 12 minus 4 is going to give me 8. Or if you really want to say it, you say 120 minus 40 is going to give me 80. All right, and that is why I get 85. Okay, that's how you do subtraction.
That's all, folks.